I had never heard about autism. The only thing I had heard about was I had read this book, this fiction book, long time ago, and one of the characters had an autistic son and talked about her journey and stuff like that. And it was a very nice book, but that was about it. And I think as a mom, when you talk about mother's instinct, it was always at the back of my mind that something about this kid is different. And I had a point of comparison. I had my daughter. And people would say, oh, he's not responding as much, he's not as friendly as her, he's living in his own world. And I would get very defensive and say, what rubbish, it's not like that, and kind of get really angry with those people. But I think at the back of my heart, literally, I knew that this is something which is true. I knew that there was something which was different about him. And then Tare Zameen Par came out, and there was all this talk about dyslexia. And so I went into, I realized I was reading about the symptoms, and I said, okay, these match Veer's. And so I made an appointment. I said, okay, I think I need to go and see somebody. And my brother's a doctor. And I told him, I said, you know what? I think Veer is dyslexic. I think the symptoms match him. And he said, I've been meaning to tell you for a while that I think that he's not developing in the way that typical kids do. And my heart just went cold when he said that. But I said, okay, he's going to be dyslexic, and he's going to be like the kid in Tare Zameen Par, and it'll be fine. Everything will be okay. And I kind of consoled myself with that. And then I still remember the date, 4th of January 2008. We had an appointment at 9 o'clock in the morning, got lost, and reached the clinic at Umeed Child Development Center, and walked in, and Dr. Vibha Krishnamurthy, who is now such a close friend and my mentor and guide, did the diagnosis. And she told us he has autism. And it was just like, after that, it was all a blur. It was just a complete blur. I don't remember much. I remember sitting in that taxi, and I remember both me and my husband just crying. And I just kept looking at him and saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We had no idea what we were going to do. And that whole day, it was just a blur of like, what the hell are we going to do? What is life going to be like? And I kept looking at him and thinking, this is the same kid who went to sleep last night and he was fine. And how does he suddenly got autism now? And that whole kind of stigma, in a sense, that society has of, you are the mother of an autistic child. I mean, I couldn't even bring myself to say autistic, but a kid who has autism, it took a long time. I would go to sleep at night, and then I'd wake up in the morning, and for that 1 second, I would think, everything's okay in my life, and then I would remember. And this went on for a long, long time. It went on for a very long time. It was very, very hard. Those 5 stages of grief, I went through all of them. Denial, I used to keep saying that, oh, my son doesn't have autism. He's got Asperger's syndrome, Asperger's syndrome is basically a kind of, a condition or a label given to, again, autism, but where the kids are more verbal, their IQ is higher and things like that. So I would cling to this Asperger's syndrome kind of thing. Then, of course, we tried everything, went to a faith healer. The faith healer said he's got something called basal ganglia. I said, oh, he doesn't have autism, he's got basal ganglia. I didn't realize basal ganglia is a part of the brain. And there is no such thing like having basal ganglia. Everybody has a basal ganglia, but, so we clung to that for the longest time. Went to a past life regressionist who told me that his life and my life has been intertwined across lifetimes, which I can tell you, I mean, considering the connection I have with him, I'm pretty sure it's intertwined. And she said, you have to undo the past trauma and something like that. And finally, I mean, it took years and years and years, even after I started working at Umeed, because I really felt such a tremendous sense of privilege, and I felt I needed to give back. Even then, I could not accept, I would not tell my patients' parents that they'd say, what have you done? You've done masters in psychology. And I would say, yes, I've done a master's in psychology. I would not tell them that I was the mom of a kid who was like theirs for many, many, many years. So it took a long time. And during that time, there was denial initially. There was lots of anger. Oh my God. I was like, really, like, you had Amitabh Bachchan was angry young man. I was angry young woman. Really. I was just angry all the time. I was angry. It was obviously unprocessed grief in a sense, and there's a very beautiful term for it. It's called accidental grief, because people feel that you do not have the right to grieve over a child who is diagnosed with autism or is diagnosed with any kind of disability, because your child is there, right? So the parents who've lost their children feel, what are you grieving over? Your child is alive. But there is that kind of accidental grief. You do grieve because you feel that your life is headed in one way, but it suddenly takes a very sharp U-turn and it's headed in a completely different way after that. And I think that when I wrote my book and I had reached that point after, it's been 15 years now, and when I wrote the book, it was about 12 years. It had taken me that long to be able to tell my story. It was to tell parents that it's okay to grieve, but you know what? Your life is going to be very, very different. It's going to be very different from what you kind of envisioned, but it's not going to be a bad life. It'll still be a good life. You'll still laugh. You'll still experience joy. You'll still have good times. It'll just be different. So all the emotions, lots of bargaining, like I said, all these faith healers and past life regressionists and stuff like that. Lots of sadness, lots and lots and lots of sadness, lots of crying without knowing why I was crying, lots of, just breaking down, just thinking, what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? What am I going to do? How am I going to take care of this kid? How is it going to happen? And finally, reaching that stage of acceptance. And I would say that writing Beyond the Blue took me one step further of reaching a stage of appreciation, because I think that through that, the whole catharsis of writing the book, I reached a stage where I could look at my son through new eyes, and I honestly fell in love with him all over again. I was just like, wow, just look how far he's come. Look at what an amazing kid he is. And I think that really completed that circle that I had traveled of reaching that stage of complete appreciation for him.